It's time to hit the road and discover Texas with Annie Studebaker. Get ready to travel deep into the heart of the Lone Star State, meeting friendly folks and exploring fascinating places. Experience a way of life like nowhere else in the world as we uncover the rich history and culture of Texas. Discover adventure, discover excitement, discover Texas with Annie Studebaker.
Adapting to the changing world of technology can be challenging and rewarding. Today we will meet Zachary and Rebekah Mann from Bigfoot, Texas. We will see how their modern farming methods take them far beyond traditional ones. Okay, we're here with Zachary Mann at his farms, and today we get to find out all about tractors that run on GPS.
Above us, there's satellites that are floating around in the space, and they send signals down to our receivers and our combines, our tractors. And as it's sending down those signals, it's going into a computer screen inside the tractor or the combine, and it's telling the combine where to drive. It's telling it, it's just giving it information exactly where it's at in the Earth's position. And we mainly use the GPS for tracking, and that's making the rows, that's driving the combine, that's keeping things straight. That's why if you notice things nowadays are straight, you don't have any more crooked rows, everything's straight.
Okay, so you could actually take your hands off the wheel.
You can actually, as we were combining, we weren't driving the combine. The GPS was driving the combine for us.
No, I like working like that. That's
well, that's right.
But you have to make the turns.
You have to make the turns. Well, actually, they do make a program now that you can buy that'll make the turns for you, but we don't. It's, you know, it's just another added expense. It's like another option that you can buy. It takes out all the operator error. In the old days, you know, you used to look at rows. I was looking at pictures of old farming pictures a while back, and I was looking at the rows and I was thinking, good Lord, you know, you sit there and look at those rows like that. And back in the days, that was straight. Now, I mean, it's as straight as an arrow. I mean, you can go for 5 miles in a line and it's the same straight line all the way. There's no wobbles. You know, there's just, everything is straight. And it makes a huge difference. The operators that are operating the equipment, they don't get as tired because they're not having to drive the equipment. In the old days where you spent 90% of your time driving, now you spend 90% of your time looking backwards and watching the equipment. Instead of the stuff getting tore up, you're actually monitoring the equipment instead of having to spend most of your time driving the equipment. That makes it nice. I remember when we first got it, we had some issues where the guys didn't want to do it. They're like, no, I'll just drive it by hand. You're like, no, we spent a bunch of money, you're going to drive it with the computer. And then now, the same guys that told me that early on, they won't even drive a tractor without it now. And I don't blame them. I don't blame them. I mean, I definitely don't blame them.
Wow.
Because even the combine, I mean, just combining and running with the grain buggy, it's so much easier now with the GPS because you don't have to be worried about running into the buggy. You don't have to worry about the other guy running into you. I mean, it's just, everything is so much more streamlined. A lot more user-friendly. A lot more user-friendly. This is the GPS display that we look at. The receiver's up in front of the cab is a little yellow ball. It tells everything on the tracking part on where to put the combine on the tracking and the spacing. Once all that information goes inside the display, then the display tells the farmer or the driver what's going on with all the tracking lines and the combine. This thing also tells me how the performance of the combine is doing. As you can tell right here, we're not actually running right now, we're parked right here on the turn row, but it tells you your instant yield. It tells you the instant moisture of the corn. This tells you the average. This tells you the average moisture. It tells you the amount of diesel that was consumed while you're combining on that load. And this tells you how many pounds are in the back of the grain tank, and this tells you how many bushels per hour you're actually harvesting. It also tells you other things on the machine, like I have it set up to tell me the temperature of the motor, because that's important, because if it gets hot, catch on fire. And there's some other things on there also we're running. There's different pages. Different pages tell you different things. You know, they're all kind of telling you the same thing because I have it set to where it's telling me virtually the yield and it's telling me the moisture. This tells me how many acres I've cut so far. We've cut over 345 acres. You know, we're on 24-inch rows. This tells me my average moisture. This was the average yield in spots. There are other pages. This page tells me what the field will look like. If you notice, there's a bar chart over here. anything over green is over 160 bushels, and if it gets in the yellow, it's between 150 and 160. So this tells me, you know, where the good spots and the bad spots were in the field. You know, good thing is it's mainly green, so it was a pretty decent field. Now after the end of the season, I could take all the information off the display and I could stick it towards the planter, and I can control all my fertilizer rates based on the yield production that I harvested. If there are weak spots or good spots, I could say, well, maybe this area in here might need more fertilizer. So, you know, I could take all the information based off of this and do it. We don't actually always do it all the time, but it's got the capability of doing it. The problem is some of this technology is nice, but you have to buy all the other technology to make that technology work on something else. You got to pick the things you want to do. You know, for us, we usually stick with a straight rate on fertilizer. There are a lot of guys that do variable rate. I think there is merit to it in certain circumstances. I think there is, but for us, you know, we usually use flat rate, so we don't do a lot of that stuff. But we usually mainly use the GPS for tracking and just, you know, and for harvesting, you know, information. This display and this receiver are made to where you can take them out from combine to tractor to, you know, whatever you're running. It's not just made just for this machine, it's made for everything. This display here tells you everything about the combine. It doesn't have to do so much with the GPS. This just tells you, this monitors your header performance. This monitors the thrashing performance. It tells you if you're overloading the combine or underloading it. And this is all your other information on the combine as far as the mechanics go. The fuel, the temperature, it tells you rotor speed, header speed, fan speed, concave clearance, all that information like that. Everything's tied to a big, huge computer in the back of the combine, which is back there in the engine compartment, and everything goes through that computer, and it all comes back to here. It comes back to the display. Everything's all tied together. That's how we're able to keep the machine running to full maximum capacity all the time. So this tells you if there's belts broke, if there's something going wrong with the machine. Instead of running it like the old combines in the old days, you just ran it until you heard something go bop or bang, or, you know, or if you felt a bad serious vibration, you knew there's something was wrong. Nowadays they put more sensors on there. The sensors are nice. They could be a pain in the butt at times when they're not working right, but when they're all working right, it's a lot nicer because it tells you there's something wrong. Funny thing is, one sensor can stop the whole combine though, so so I love them and I hate them. You know, it's like everything. It's like a car and everything else, but that's about it.
Hold on to your hat. We'll be right back.
All of our farms are irrigated by circles, so everything for us is done in a circle. I know, like if you're down in the valley, everything's kind of in a square box. Down here, everything's in a circle. Everything's always in a circle. So we still plant in straight lines, but everything we mark off is in a circle. So
I never thought about that.
yeah. This is an irrigation system. This is the pivot. This is where all the controls are at to control the irrigation system. Before the phone and the internet on the accents, we used to always have to start these things by hand, and by hand is by opening up the box and pretty much controlling the system. Every time I wanted to start a system or water, I'd always have to drive my pickup always to the pivot, come over here, start the systems, wait 10 minutes for everything to power up, pressure up, and then at that point, then I can go and drive out of the field. As you can see, we just started an irrigation system. We are currently watering peanuts. We started this system using our phone system. We've been here about 10 minutes waiting for it to finally get going, and it's just now starting to pressure up. The system we're using is Accent. I can start and operate my system with my phone. I started the irrigation well. It takes about 10 minutes for the water to get here. Once it gets here, the computer tells the system when to start, and it won't start until it's fully pressured up. Once it's fully pressured, the computer will automatically kick it on, and you'll see here, if you watch the last tower, you'll see it starting to move here in probably about 30 seconds from now. And once it realizes it's pressured up, then it'll start moving on its own. And the computer takes over from there, and after that, I don't have to worry about the system. All I have to do is monitor it on my phone. It'll tell me exactly where it's at in the field, hour by hour. Makes it much, much easier. I'm gonna go ahead and currently set the speed of my system as I'm waiting here. I'm gonna go ahead and set it for 13% because at 13% that's 1 inch. On an irrigation system, the last tower controls the entire system. So on this last tower, right below the blue sign, there's a box there, a computer box, and inside that computer box there's a GPS module. It tells exactly where the system is at in the field at all times. So I could pull my phone out of my pocket or pull my iPad up or be at the house, and every time I send the signal to this irrigation system, it'll go to that little box that's on the last tower right here, and wherever that system's pointing or wherever direction it's at, the pressure, the water, the speed, it tells me all that information in real time. That's a real nice thing to have when you want to know where your equipment's at, and instead of having to drive 10 miles from one end to the other or 20 miles, and some guys even are a lot further than that. It saves time, it saves labor. Everything about it is much, much nicer, and it just makes it to where I don't have to be everywhere at one time. But that's how the system is controlled, by the last tower there, and the computer is right below that blue sign, and that's what's telling the whole system what to do and how to do it, and it tells me everything on my phone that I need to know. In previous time, where in the heat of the summer we were on this program called load management, the power company would shut you off for 3 hours a day if the peak demand got too high. Well, what happens when you're in the midst of trying to harvest or planting or doing all these other crops in the summertime, and then all of a sudden the power company's cutting you off, and then it makes you have to go back out there and turn everything back on. And they'll shut you off from like 3 o'clock or 3:30 in the afternoon all the way till about 6 o'clock in the afternoon. So that means at 6 o'clock, when you're thinking about ready to going home to call it a day, now all of a sudden you have to start 10, 15 more pivots up all over again, and it takes 10, 15 minutes to start every single one of them. Plus you have to drive to every single one of them. So I mean, it turns into 2.5 hours after 6 o'clock, then you're finally rolling home at 8:30, 9 o'clock, just because you had to go back and start irrigation pivots. So that's where the AgSense comes in, and that's how it makes irrigating much easier, having the technology to operate all this stuff off the phone. Doesn't mean that it gives you the right to never look at your equipment ever again. It just gives you the option of being able to start things and get things rolling, so that when you have time to go out there, you can go out there and do it and not have to spend so much time at each pivot point starting everything all up. So
Hold on to your hat. We'll be right back.
the GPS monitor, not only does it do the tracking like driving the combine, the GPS also monitors, like as we're combining, it's also monitoring the yield. As we're cutting the corn or milo or sunflowers or whatever you're cutting with the combine, it sits there and does a map of the yield. So you could download everything that you did today. You can download it in January, February, or whenever you're going to start fertilizing. And you could take all that information and you could do a variable rate fertilizing if you wanted to. Or you could also do variable rate planting, put more seed out or less seed out per acre in bad or good spots by looking at your harvesting maps that the computer has produced. So there's all sorts of different deals, and there's so many options on the GPS. I mean, it not only does tracking, and not only, when we spray, the computer takes care of the sprayer. All I tell it is how many gallons per acre I want to put out. The computer, I can adjust from 20 miles an hour to 5 miles an hour, and the computer will take care of everything. Where in the old days, you'd have to tell a guy, you're going to drive 5 miles an hour, you're going to put out 30 pounds of pressure, don't alter either one because it'll change the rate. Now with the computer, it's a variable rate. You can go as fast as you want to, as slow as you want to. It takes care of all those things. Planting the same way. They make hydraulic planters now where you can go out there, set your seed population per acre, and the computer will take care of all that stuff. The GPS will do all that stuff for you.
So when did this start, this GPS start?
I started farming in 2000. Actually 2001 is when I started farming. Been in farming my whole life, but I actually started getting a paycheck in 2000.
Okay.
That's when I got out of school. And the thing is, or 2001, the thing is that The first couple years it wasn't out. It wasn't until about 2002 or 3 it came out. That's when we bought our very first one.
Wow, it's been around a while.
We've been running it since that long. So
that's very nice.
And it started off with one. It started with some old little antique little brown box. That's what they call the brown box. Started off with the brown box, and we had to drive it by hand. You had to sit there.
It's evolved now.
You had to sit there and stare at it. Well, then it turned into auto steer, because that's when they finally got into auto steer. We got auto steer, and then the displays changed. They got away from the brown box. Now they went to the color display. We thought that was great. Well, then they went to touch screen monitor, which we got. It's just every year it progresses.
Technology. That's
Technology. One thing I noticed about it though, on the GPS stuff, it's best to upgrade. That's the one I've seen some. I've seen people where they don't upgrade and it comes back to haunt them. I know on the computer stuff, it's best to upgrade. When they come out with something new, within a year you better switch, because if you don't, you're gonna get left in the dirt.
Wow.
And then it's costly to catch up, and it's hard to catch up. So.
True.
It's amazing, our old combine. Well, when I was a little kid, we used to have a John Deere 95 combine. And when I was a little kid, I thought that was a big machine. And back in the day, it was a fairly substantial machine. But they would have to cut, we're not talking corn, but talking milo. They used to have to start 2 weeks before the milo was actually dry enough, because the combine was so slow and they had so many acres that they couldn't cover enough acres, so they had to end up drying all the milo, because it would fall down before they would get to the end, to finish the season. And with the machinery now, we can cut, if this was a 30-foot head on this combine, which is not, it's a 24, but if it was a 30-foot header, there'd be no reason why we couldn't combine 125 acres a day or more on corn. And it's amazing on the amount of material that you can shove through the machine nowadays on the newer equipment. And the GPS and stuff, it makes it so much easier on the operator. I remember when I first started farming, which wasn't that long ago, it's about 15, 16 years ago, everything you had to do, you had to sit there and drive the machine and keep track of everything. Now, I can sit here and be at ease, be able to run my farm, be able to tell my employees what they need to be doing, and be on here, and and still be monitoring the combine and not having to struggle with having to drive it, do this, do that, because the computer is taking care of so many things now, which is really, really nice. So that's where it comes into play.
Okay, well, this has been very interesting, Zachary. Thank you so much, because farming with GPS sounds like a piece of cake, but I know it's not.
It's a lot easier than it used to be.
Yeah, but it's awesome. So, very educational. Right. Thanks a lot.
No problem, no problem. Since we've gotten broadband internet in this area, having the internet at the house with our computers tied to everything, it makes it much easier. Well, you couldn't do this stuff without it. So that's where the use of all the computers and the internet and everything else has come into play on this. And it's helped out immensely on the technology. So.
So I've been keeping the books for the farm here, and it's interesting to pull records that were kept in the 60s of how the finances were managed here on the farm. And so this is a ledger book from the farm from 1964 through 68, where Zachary's grandmother, Evelyn, kept the books, kept up with her income and her expenses, and that's how she managed the farm and provided for a very successful farm. And now it's been handed to us, and I have moved, obviously, the books onto my computer. So with technology, I can manage all of my finances here using QuickBooks Pro. So I keep track of my income, my expenses, I pay our workers, I can create invoices, I can receive payments, and it's all nicely kept here on the computer. It's easy then to communicate this information to our accountant at the end of the year, and therefore paying taxes is a very easy operation for us. So I'm thankful to have the technology that we do, and that I'm not managing the farm like they did back in the day on a ledger book like this one. So the United States government requires that every farm report what they have planted, what they have harvested, where they have planted it, if it's irrigated, non-irrigated, what the crop is. And so in the past, we've had to print out an aerial map of our land, and we have to draw around circles and write on it what is the crop, when was it planted, and then we have to physically take that information down to our local farm service agency in our county. And now the United States government has put together a program online called FSA Farm Plus, and it shows you your farm circles, an aerial map of your farm circles, and you can go in here and you can manipulate this information. You can see the circles, you can draw on the circles to identify what is on this field, and you can share this information with the Farm Service Agency. So it's really a time saver from having to manually do this information to now being able to do this online and submit this information to the government so they know what we've planted and where we've planted it.
As we have seen in today's episode, the development of modern farming technology and equipment has transformed the industry drastically, leading to a more profitable, efficient, safer, and environmentally friendly operations. This is Annie Studebaker. Until next time.